All right, people. So our first review of the day is going to be for the new Disney Plus Marvel series Wonder Man. Wonder Man, which premiered there, and it dropped all episodes at once there. People say like, "Wow, this show came out already." I didn't even know, because it seems like Marvel really wasn't marketing that heavy. But yeah,
It's either did this come out already or what is that?
yeah, either one of those two questions there. But yeah, it's already out. They premiered on January 27th, all 8 episodes. Each episode is about like 30 or so minutes there. So pretty quick watch. You know what I mean? You can get through it pretty quickly there. Like me, I watched it immediately when it came out, and I was like, well, I might maybe only watch like maybe 1 or 2 episodes. But then I was like, I'll watch another one and another one, and I'll watch one more. And by the time I was like, oh, already it was midnight or 3 a.m., I was like already like halfway through the series already. What is this about? So you have Yahya Abdul-Mateen. People might know Yahya Abdul-Mateen. He's been in such things as he was in Aquaman. He was Black Manta. He was in Watchmen. He was Dr. Manhattan in that. He was also he was also the Netflix show The Get Down. He was also, I think that's where he first kind of blew up, was The Get Down, from that there. But
He's also the weird Agent Morpheus combo in the fourth Matrix movie.
he was also in that. He was Candyman as well.
Yeah,
People might know
yeah.
him from that. He was a horror movie Candyman there. Now he's playing another man in Wonder Man there. So he plays Simon Williams there, who is a struggling actor in LA there, and he's just trying to make it. He's just trying to get his big break there. And you kind of just see the struggle of that, and then along with him on the struggle is a character we've seen before, a character Ben Kingsley, who plays Trevor Slattery there. Where people might have seen him. He was first in Iron Man 3, that character. Then he was also on Shang-Chi. Now he's popped up here in Wonder Man.
Weirdly, like the most significant original character to the MCU. Like when you just think about like characters that they made up that aren't from the comics, I feel like he may honestly be the biggest one.
Now that you say that, I mean, original character, just one they've created. I mean,
Yeah, I would have said
probably.
Coulson at one point, but I feel like that's so long ago now that maybe not.
Yeah, he's the new Coulson. Yeah. But yeah, so like I said, people might have seen him in those things before. And I listened to an interview with the director, who's Daniel Cretton, I believe is his name. And he was the director of Shang-Chi, and then he also is going to be directing the new Spider-Man movie as well that's coming out. And he at first he was like, well, this was going to be just a Trevor Slattery show, but then they were also going to do a Simon Williams show. So he was like basically just combined the two things together, and that's how you got this Wonder Man type thing here. So yeah, I mean, he's trying to audition, especially he's trying to you see his process of trying to get this big role of being the leading actor in his childhood favorite movie. They're doing a remake of it, Wonder Man there. And he's trying to get cast in it. Trevor Slattery's also trying to get cast in the movie as well, as like the best friend of Wonder Man in the movie. So you see kind of their journey and the kind of all the misadventures they kind of get into of trying to get this role. Yeah. So I don't really know much about the character of Simon Williams. Relying on a little bit, like you said, funny book boy over here, Sage. He knows a lot about comics, but you said you're not too well versed in them as well.
It's not a character I've read a lot of. I know him from some Avengers comics where he's been like part of the roster of the team. But I can't say I really read much in the way of just like a solo like Wonder Man book. I can give you a little bit on him, but he's his powers come from like an energy accident. It's something Baron Zemo actually does, I think, in an Avengers book, and then it turns this Simon Williams actor into a superhero. He gets these energy based powers. But the biggest kind of, as far as like contribution that the Simon Williams character made to long term comics is during the Ultron comics, like when Ultron was first a thing. Because in the comics, right, Hank Pym made Ultron, not Tony Stark, right? And then Ultron, it wants to wipe out the Avengers, and then Ultron creates another synthetic being to serve under him in the film, right? And that's the Vision. And in the comics, the Vision is a product of the old school, like 1940s Human Torch robot, who's been like he's like decommissioned in like a storage room at Avengers Tower, and they come out, they take that robot out, and they put a copy of Simon Williams' brain into that robot, and that's what Vision is in the comics. That's where we get that character.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I did
So
not know
you
that.
cannot have the Vision without Simon Williams first in the comics.
Oh, well, looks like they did that. Because yeah. And we're gonna talk about some of his powers and the way that works into the show. But I mean, people are always looking for the new Marvel thing. Like, is it gonna save the
Well, they
MCU?
used to.
Yeah, they used to. I mean, that's what kind of just kind of led people astray from it. Is that everyone's looking for this new thing, and like, okay, after Endgame, like, what's gonna be the new big thing that's gonna get people involved or back into it? And these Disney Plus Marvel shows for me have, I think we've reviewed some of them. If not all of them on this program already. And they've always been kind of hit or miss for me. I've liked some quite a bit. Like Loki season 2, I like a lot. I think Loki season 2 is very good.
I
Um,
like Loki, and I thought WandaVision was pretty good. There's like a couple here and there, but I'd say like more than half of them, I say I probably have not been a big fan of.
yeah, there's some that have good ideas, but then start kind of strong, but it's in that 8 episode model kind of blows up at the end. Like I think that's what happened with Miss Marvel. That was a problem. That's what happened
I'd
with
say that one was blowing up at the start, but that's just me.
But at least it had the actress who they picked to
Yeah,
play Kamala Khan. She was
no,
perfect. At least
she is I'm 100% with you. She is perfect.
she's great. And then also, I think that's what happened with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think that kind of blew up at the end there.
Well,
And then
they also do this thing where like there's a lot of examples over the years of entertainment companies doing this, but like something in real life happens that's like too close to the plot of the piece of this movie or show. So let's at the last minute change it a bunch to try and avoid like making people think about the thing that just happened, and it's like people are already thinking about it. It's like and so Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a big suffered
mm,
of that because the plot of that show originally was going to be that flag smasher or whatever. I don't even know if that was what they were
yeah,
called now.
yeah, the
That
Flag
was right.
Smash. Yeah.
The whole thing originally was they were going to unleash like a bio organic like virus
Oh, like
on the
COVID or
world.
something?
Yeah, that's exact. So they changed it just to be like, well, we can't do that. It's like that Simpsons episode from the '90s that has the Twin Towers in it that's never aired on TV again since 9/11, and it's like, all right. I mean, are people so soft that we can't have buildings in the background of a thing? It's the same thing here. It's like viruses, plots where viruses get unleashed are not going to go away. They're not done making Resident Evil games, so
Yeah.
just stop doing that.
Yeah. So, yeah, these things are kind of, hit or miss for me. And I will say, this thing, Wonder Man, is it going to be the thing that's like, you got to go see this because it's going to change your whole opinion of the MCU? No, I don't think. I don't think one thing can do that. I don't
No,
think one movie or show can do that. But I will say I was surprised by this in a good way, because I do think that with the 8 episode model, it does use it well. It doesn't feel like it doesn't have a rushed ending, a sloppy ending. Oh, let's do a big fight at the end, to try to wrap things up.
well,
It's
it also is one of the only things, and I'd say maybe after WandaVision, the only other show they've done, period, where the way it cuts at the beginning and ends of episodes actually feel like TV episodes and not a movie that's been edited.
Yes, I will say that it feels very episodic, and I think at first I was kind of bothered by the fact they released it all at once, but I think watching the show now, it's like I think it's better if they released it all at once, because I think you were talking about this with Pluribus as well, where I like each episode, but I don't think each episode has the thing where it's like, oh, I really can't wait to see what happens on the next one. It's just kind of very bingeable in the sense, like, like, oh, okay, I'll have another one. Oh, okay, I have another one. Not like I'm on the edge of my seat, like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens with the next episode. How did you feel about them releasing it all at once?
I mean, ultimately, I think that works fine because I think people don't care either way. So, in some ways, you kind of either way, you're set up for almost the same amount of success. Um, but no, I mean, I think it works because also these episodes I think are even shorter than even some of the other Disney Plus shows. I mean, they're like capping out at 30 minutes. Like a lot of them say 34 minutes, but like there's 7 to 8 minutes of credits attached to all of those, so they're
True.
really like 25. And then
Yeah.
there's even one that's like 25 minutes before taking that 7 minutes out. So it goes super quick. But also it's not like the strength of the show is in the fact that it is a more of a character drama than it is a superhero story, just in general. The superhero part is really just in the movie that they want to be cast in, not really the narrative that's actually playing out in the show. And I think, as far as like TV goes, like the show doesn't necessarily like have these sorts of ooh bang cliffhanger to lead into the next episode. They feel like much more sort of intentional, like character beat endings, which is part of what I appreciated about it. But it is, I think, better to binge that than it is to be like, what's the next week, sort of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it does work on that. And people are talking about this, I mean, I don't know if how much you pay attention to marketing or anything like that, but people are talking about like how much buried the show is. Um, even I think even the show is more buried than what they did with maybe even Ironheart, and they kind of just
Yeah.
put it out there and kind of just like, well, people watch it, whatever.
I think it's
Um,
because like each time something fails to live up to their like expectations of viewership, they just go, "All right, well, try less on the next one."
yeah. So I don't know if that was the case. Maybe they just were like that. Like, we don't know how to really market this show because it's not really a superhero show. It's like it's more of just a character drama there with people with powers, and sometimes he uses his powers here and there.
It's
Like I
really
said,
minimal for sure, though. Well, and
yeah,
consider that the viewership for that first season of Daredevil: Born Again was like one of their lowest viewed shows, like just in terms of pure numbers. So if that did, and they did a lot of marketing for that. So if that didn't do that well, I can't imagine what their expectations for this were.
yeah, especially because this kind of, like I said, this kind of snuck up on people. Like, oh, already it's out already, January. Okay, yeah, well, here's all the Wonder Woman. Here we go. And also it's with this lead character Yahya Abdul Mateen, who obviously leading man guy, leading man looks, leading man charisma, but the character really isn't like that because the character Simon Williams is very much of an overthinker, very kind of distant, very closed off. He's not very liked by many people in his life, even his family. There's a lot of contention there.
Yeah.
Um, and there's that. And then there's even a episode where he tries to like, when he is on set to talk to people, it's like, talk about their interest and ask questions, and that's very awkward and very uncomfortable.
and
Um,
and that's some great acting because for like a good actor that knows how to act well to then fake like to be able to realistically and entertainingly act not having charisma is like that's such an interesting sort of double layer of acting to have to pull off that it's like clearly a very talented person to be able to do that.
yeah. So I've never seen quite a Marvel leading character like this before because they always have some type of coolness or charm to them that like, oh, that makes you attractive. What's kind of your opinion on that in the Simon Williams character there?
No, I mean I think that's a huge part of what makes this work. I think, I mean, like, look, for better or for worse, good movie or bad, a lot of superhero stuff is popcorn entertainment. Like even when it's good, a lot of times it is popcorn. There's certain things that like rise above that, and like I think like something like The Dark Knight has like a very profound, actual narrative about like the post 9/11 security apparatus of the United States, and you get that sometimes in superhero stuff, but usually one of the kind of tag-alongs of being popcorn entertainment is that the main characters always have to sort of be likable or charming or kind of immediately heroic, and not to say that this character never has those moments at all because I think he gets there, but for him to have so much trouble with the social interactions, I think that's great too because it allows for a different flavor of comedy than what you're used to with the MCU, because usually it's the very everybody's quipping in the same way to each other with nicknames, and it's that kind of Joss Whedon style that like seemed to just become like, well, everything has to be like that. And here it's this, I think, drier sense of humor that plays off of being socially uncomfortable, which I found way funnier than the humor in most of the other Marvel stuff.
Yeah, like when he's at his mother's birthday party, like that was just, like that was cringe, but in a kind of entertaining way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like how he's just interacting with his family, and like he has this dream of being an actor, and it's like, hey man, this thing ain't paying the bills, and I got to give you all this money and bail you out, and
And his brother like really does not believe in him.
yeah, like his brother's on his ass. That's something also really huge there. So yeah, that worked really well there. I like you said, the talent of that to play that of like being such like kind of a uncharismatic guy, even though you are a very charismatic guy, and making that kind of look real. And then also just what it looks like of being kind of a actor in LA, and the struggle of that, of going to all these auditions and seeing all these people up for your, trying to compete against those people. And I didn't even know there was a thing called self-tape studios. I didn't even know that was like a thing there.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Which in the show they say it's like relatively new. Like I guess that
Hmm.
2019, I think they say that popped up, like people just going to do self tapes. And I think another big key of the show is having the Trevor Slattery character, who was a character that I think this is probably the most I've ever liked him,
Same.
seeing it in any Iron Man 3, Shang-Chi. He provides good comedic bits, I think, mostly in Shang-Chi. I think he wears out his welcome in that
I,
because
I agree.
he's there too long.
I will
Uh,
say the one other time I thought his character did work is it was on like the either the Thor 2 or Iron Man 3 Blu-ray. There was like a short film about him being in prison. And then at the end, like the journalist interviewing him is like reveals himself to be like working for the real Mandarin, and is like breaking him out of prison. And that was like a short film they did. And that hinted at there being some layers, deeper layers to the character that weren't just these comedy bits. But it was just a tease in that. It was just like oh, maybe something is there. And then here I feel like, oh, we're actually kind of exploring this person in a way that isn't just comedy 100% of the time.
Yeah, this was the one shots they did. They usually attach those to like the DVDs and Blu-rays, yeah, of it. And All Hail the King was this one.
Yep.
Yeah, they did that one there. So it's much more because his whole role is that Trevor Slattery is working as a double agent to get close to Simon, because damage control, which damage control seems to be, they're working up damage control as being this big opposition antagonist force, especially with a lot of people with powers. They were in the Miss Marvel show, they were in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Did you notice though, every time they show their like headquarters, it seems to be in a completely different place, even though the building is identical?
Their headquarters,
Yeah, I saw someone make a comparison of like every time we've seen that building in like a different place or a different one of those shows. It's like the same building, but the surrounding area is completely different looking.
okay, I did not notice that. Okay. Maybe they upgraded. Maybe they they
That's possible.
every time they get a bigger budget, actually, maybe, well, actually, that's the big contention about this thing where damage control is like, hey, they got this new prison that to put superpowered people in, but they don't have people to fill the prison.
Right.
And it's not the raft. I don't know what they call the prison they have.
I don't remember it being like a particularly memorable name, at least if they did have a specific unique name for it.
Yeah, I don't remember what they call it or anything,
Well,
but yeah.
to be fair, it also doesn't seem like the hardest place to get into either, from what we see.
That brings up, I'm gonna talk about that because that brings up one of my issues I had with the ending. I wanna know if you what do you think about that? But, yeah, so it's a prison, so their big thing is, like, if they don't fill this prison with some high level people, then the government's gonna cut their funding, and they're gonna cut off the money there, which obviously mirrors real life stuff, obviously, how
Yeah.
prisons operate and work. So they go like, "Okay, since this guy, Simon Williams, we've been tracking him since he was a kid, because he had an incident when he was a kid, at where his house burned down, and he was completely fine. Like nothing happened to him, no injuries or anything like that. So they've been tracking him, monitoring since he was a kid. They assigned Trevor Slattery to him. It's like, hey, this actor guy, he's an actor. You guys can link up, get us information on him, and then we're going to be able to arrest him. And then also they say in the show that people with powers are not allowed to work in Hollywood. They're not allowed, and they do like a whole backstory episode of that, which I thought was really cool.
Now, I was curious to ask you about that episode in particular because that was my favorite episode as just like one individual self-contained episode, and it almost made me think of like something more like Atlanta.
Somebody
Than
did mention that. Nick mentioned
okay,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I got that sort of vibe from it, and I thought like that as its own standalone little like 20-25 minute story. I thought that is better than like 90% of the things we've gotten out of the MCU for the longest time now. And just again going and doing like something that feels like regular, real, actual human beings in a scenario that plays out very poorly at a certain point. But it just felt like very real reactions to it, or very real sort of lack of precaution, around this thing. And it's like, oh yeah, I could see how that would cause like an incident and like cause like laws to be written. And it also, I think, did something very fun in that, there were a couple times in the show where like a celebrity cameo would happen, and at first I would be like, I don't know, that seems shameless. But then there are two big examples, and one's in this episode, one's in an earlier episode. But both times they do it, like they really go for it. I actually thought by the time that celebrity cameo was like done, I thought like, okay, you know what? You guys actually found a way to make that work and not make it just feel like a shameless sort of cameo for cameo's sake. Like the how self-deprecating it was towards both of the actors that show up and play themselves, I thought ended up making it work quite well. Like Josh Gad is in this episode that's this flashback, and I thought like after a few minutes he's talking to this doorman character, and he's trying to convince him to come be in a movie, and he's like, "Come on, Josh, I can't act. I've never even been an actor." And Josh Gad goes, "Come on, I can't act." And I was like, "Okay, I appreciate what." Like at first I was not sure, but once I saw what they were doing with it, I actually thought those worked really well.
Yeah. So yeah, and the episode before it ends off on a good one because he goes like, "Well, I don't want to end up like Daryl Doorman Davis," and then he goes, "Well, who's Daryl Doorman Davis?" And the next episode it gives a whole just backstory episode where he talks about it and where it just shows it of who that person is. And yeah, it's a really great episode. Yeah, like I said, yeah, it does remind us something of Atlanta. It's black and white, which was an interesting choice of that. And just like his story was just like he was just this doorman. All of a sudden, he gets powers. Then he saves people alive. He becomes like a hero. Then he, becomes famous and, starts being in movies and making all this money. And he has his own, like, what you talking about, Willis? He gets his own catchphrase. And then eventually he sees the downside of fame and all that. Like,
He's
I thought
running
that
out of
was,
money too, and
yeah. What makes me think how long, like, what was the time frame of that?
it had to be a while because, well, because and then the movie that he does with Josh Gad, which I thought was hilarious. It's a bank heist movie called Cash Grab.
you know,
I thought that was pretty good. And then it must be at least a couple of years worth of time that we're passing in that episode, because he's like down on his luck and like out of money, and he gets a call, hey, they want to do a cash grab too, and he's like, oh, thank God, cash grab too. And I was like, I loved that title, the way they threw that in there.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a really good story there. And yeah, so they did a lot of kind of good episodes like that, but yeah, it's mostly just like a character piece of
Yeah.
just seeing these two people, and you get to learn more about Trevor Slattery and kind of him, and he does a lot of good emotional scenes, and one of them. I think one of the more emotional scenes is when he's talking to him when they go to the director's house, who's the dude from the dictator from Superman.
Yeah, he's playing like an auteur director here, like a almost like a David Lynch, who would never do a mainstream superhero movie, but it's a sort of like David Lynch doing Dune, almost, is what I got from that.
Yeah, like he's all about like the process. I want to get into the character psyche and all this other stuff, and it's like, man, you're just doing a superhero movie. Like, okay, okay, sure. But yeah, he and there's a scene where he's, they're bringing all these people who this is the second audition, so they're bringing like the list of people who are gonna, audition for the part, and he's bombing hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not doing well,
Even
and just
Trevor, who up until that point every time was like very reassuring, and is telling him like, no, it's gonna be fine. You're over blah blah blah. Even he at one point in that scene is like, you're about to blow it. Like,
Yeah, and there's a scene where they talk outside on the balcony, and that was like I thought a really emotional scene. I thought that really worked really well. I'll show it in a bit here, but what did you think about kind of that moment?
yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I thought that was great. And because of the sort of the obvious sort of underlying context of him spying on him, and then this extra element to it, and then the scene from the movie that they are doing line readings of being about the friend of Wonder Man betraying him. And yeah, the way they worked all that in together, I thought was both clever and yeah, really strongly like emotional. Like for a character like Trevor, who I didn't care about that much, like I don't know, he was again just someone who was funny but didn't do a lot else. The fact that they managed to create like a friendship between these two, that I was like, I actually kind of care like how that friendship plays out and how those characters are here for each other in these scenes. Like I was surprised at how much that was working.
Yeah. And this is the scene right here I'm talking about. Let's take a look here. Let me hold on. Let me make sure right there.
Losing someone you love so much. Wanting something so badly you could burst. Hurting someone you care about. Being hurt by those you love. That's your life. That's who you are. Mirror up to nature. That's our job. When we share our pain, our grief, our joy, the audience less alone in theirs.
That's a great line.
Yeah, very, and also, these two actors, they kind of link up because they're both at a screening for Midnight Cowboy, and that theme kind of runs throughout the movie. And both of them take the craft of acting very seriously. You know what I mean? Both of them, and get their insight of how important they look at the craft of it, which I thought was also kind of interesting there as well.
And I think part of what makes that work is that like the Trevor character is just straight up written here differently than he has been in like all of his other appearances, because in so many of his other appearances he is buffoonish and unaware of what's going on around him to such an extreme degree that like you don't really believe that he could do anything competently. But in this show, kind of across the whole set of episodes, I feel like there is a better balance of him being like a bit of a dork and being a little goofy versus like out of his mind, like not even like linking up to reality. Because again, in those other movies, he seems so gone and like frazzled and like barely connecting with the other characters. And here there's so many more scenes of him just behaving like a human being and just connecting and having normal conversations with other people, and then being a little weird sometimes, but it doesn't feel like that is dominating his character traits in the way that it has in all the other times he's shown up.
Yeah. Yeah, he still has his kind of fun, kind of goofy moments here. Like, again, I'll bring up the scene where he goes to his family's his mother's birthday party. He tags along there because he's trying to dig up dirt on him and trying to figure out there. And he's bouncing around between all the different guests and he's trying to get information and he's just dumbfounded. He's like, he's talking to one person was a childhood friend of his, and it's like, so you rode in the car with him every day, huh? So it's like, you must have some great stories. And she's like, no, I don't. He's like, really? Every day you rode in the car, you don't have anything, you don't know anything about him. She's like, no, not really.
I really liked how he did that a couple times at that get together. And as soon as he realized the person had nothing really for him, he, instead of like ending the conversation organically, he would just kind of start walking away, but he was still like looking at him. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. And one thing about these Marvel shows, I mean, we talked about with Miss Marvel that how they got her powers wrong in it. Do you think this show captures his powers correctly? You think it's pretty much straight
Um,
1-to-1?
yeah, I mean, it's basically his powers are just energy based. I mean, the thing is you don't they're not in it very much. It plays such a like it is important and it plays a role in the narrative that he has powers. But actually showing them it's so minimal, and the show's focused on so much other stuff that like I'd forget even for a little bit that I was like, oh yeah, no, this is like still a superhero thing in some way. But yeah, like I mean, when they show the little bit of energy that they do, kind of in like the last episode, it looks like what that character's like kind of purple, like light purple energy powers look like in the comics. So like I thought that pretty much was just what it is. Um, but I mean, I was really impressed at just the fact that they were so restrained in their use of that.
Mm, yeah. And they don't use it that much there. I think I saw a compilation online of like him using his powers. I think it's only like 3 minutes long or something like that. Like it's not, so it's very, very super short there.
And I
Um,
also loved that it was his dad's like favorite movie, like childhood film, that he's then trying to be in this reboot of. I thought that was because they have a really, you talk about like a good emotional scenes. I thought the childhood flashback of his dad, like lying to his school and taking him, telling his school he's sick, and then taking him for like a sort of a day of bonding and going to see this movie in the theater. Like I thought that was all a really great sort of emotional scene too, because it gave you this sense that even as sort of emotionally plugged up as Simon is and overthinking as he is, there is this sort of love for his dad that's driving so much of what he's doing in his life, even if he's sort of doing it subconsciously.
mm, yeah, I like that too. Yeah, like he had that connection and love of film through his dad. In the Wonder Man movie, we don't see much of it, but it's kind of like seems like a Flash Gordon type thing.
It's very Flash Gordon. That I do kind of wish we maybe saw just a bit more of what that looked like, but
Yeah. But it seems like his powers activate like when he's stressed or angry or kind of just overstimulated and he just, you know what I mean, he has to like release it or something like that. So we see a lot of that in it as well. I thought that was kind of interesting there how we see that. And then the ending there when it comes where we see that, he's got his dream job, he's cast as one man. But the reveal comes that he figures out that Trevor Slattery kind of betrayed him and that he's been informing on him to damage control and these people like that. And then, because of that, he destroys the set and everything like that. So obviously that damage control is like, boom, that's it. That's our key thing to get him and to put him in the prison there. But Trevor Slattery, takes the blame. He, dons
mm-hmm.
name again, the Mandarin,
Yeah.
and he takes the blame for it. And he ends up in the prison. How'd you
Which
like?
I was just gonna say, I wonder like if international knowledge about like the real Mandarin, like it is because clearly people like in Shang-Chi, there were a lot of people. It was like a big criminal network. The like real Mandarin, people knew who that was outside of just like a small circle. Like that was like a real guy, and even Trevor getting broken out of prison to be taken prisoner by the real man. So that all happened. So it's just interesting too that like it comes up a bunch of people like recognize him like throughout the show, like, oh, aren't you that
The terrorist
terrorist?
guy?
Aren't you that guy? Which I thought was very funny every time he got like recognized as that. But it is interesting that sort of him doing that, but it being a false impression of a real person. That never really seemed to play a part, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, he takes the blame there, and yeah. And then the final episode, which starts off kind of quiet. It's like you think like, oh, Simon. He's like, well, I'm shadowing this guy because I'm going to be taking another role. And then where that was all, I thought really well done how that plays out. Of like, you think where is this going to go? Of him shadowing this guy, and then it turns out he's a guard for the facility that Trevor's in.
Yeah.
That kind of comes to one of my complaints about it is that so they said like, because he's working his way to try to gain this guy's trust so he can go to his job so he can shadow him there. But they said like, okay, well, the guy that he's shadowing says like, oh, well, finally my job lets you through because the security checks passed. But wouldn't they know that this famous guy was best friends with this terrorist?
Yeah, yeah, that is. I don't know. You'd think their system would have flagged that, because because I mean he knows who he is, right? Like this guy he's shadowing is like recognizes him as a Wonder Man and is like, oh, I know I can't tell anybody and I have to keep it on the down low and all that stuff. But like, yeah, like when he brings him in, he's like doing it as like a trainee shadowing him at work. But like, unless they used a fake name somehow, but it's just, yeah, how do you not, like, you're after this guy already, but you don't recognize him when he comes in?
Yeah, like, it's like and people like I said, this movie blew up. Like Wonder Man became like a huge success, and everything. So people know who he. I mean, he became famous kind of overnight just from this one movie. And then the fact that he goes to his facility and they checked his name and everything, it's like they wouldn't know that he was best friends with this guy. Um, but yeah, he goes in there and he was able to break Trevor free. He's able to kind of seems like he has control over his abilities, and he takes them and then boom, he flies up in the sky. It's done there. Um, so yeah, what'd you think about the ending of it?
I mean, I think it's as a character thing, it's nice as far as like I'm gonna, you know, even though he did this for me, I'm gonna sort of put everything on the line to get him back. I think there's a nice character thing in that, but you're right. Some of the logic of that just doesn't totally hold up there. Um, Maybe if they made it a longer scene and put a little more time into like, oh, the fake name that they put in for his ID, and like maybe just a little more could have made that sell better. Um, but one thing I will say that I was a little disappointed that never really came up in the show is the whole meta. It's about an actor that's going to be in a remake of a superhero film, and the core story not really being a superhero story. I think that's all great, right? But the pitch before the show came out seemed to sort of include the idea of like pop culture having superhero fatigue and them making this movie in the context of people being tired of superhero movies. And then when you watch the show, I don't really feel like that concept of superhero fatigue ever came up or played a part in the story.
You saying you got that impression from like watching the trailer that's this would be about, or
No, like the press releases pitched the show as,
oh,
they're making, he's an actor trying to be in a superhero movie in a world with superhero fatigue, and like they pitched that as part of the show, and then actually watching the show, I'm like, that's not really in here at all. Like they maybe
no.
mention people being a little sick of superheroes once in the first episode, and it never comes up again. So that was just slightly disappointing because I feel like they sold the show a little bit to me on the idea that like there would be somewhat of a meta commentary on superhero fatigue itself, and then that's really nowhere to be seen.
I mean, do you think it's kind of shown with the dictator guy that it's like what he wants to do with the superhero? That's kind of illustrated a little bit
I
there.
think that is what like the most of what it is in there. Because he makes like a comment about it in like his little interview when you first see him, I think. But I mean, and again, I like all that stuff and how they're like the character scenes where they're exploring that stuff with him in that sort of interview or casting call episode. But I guess just because they pitched it this way, so I was expecting it because of that. It seemed like you might see sort of the public's reaction of people not wanting to see superheroes as much, and that's really not in there anywhere.
Mm. On top of that, did you expect to see some type of commentary about like the fact that he's doing a remake and they're race swapping the lead role? Did you expect to maybe see some commentary?
I did think that would be a bigger deal because
Mm.
it didn't seem like that mattered at all, and we know in the real world people lose their shit every time. So
Yeah. Like, yeah, that doesn't really in the casting, that doesn't really come up at all. And then when he even meets like the other actors who are supposed to be Wonder Man,
it's a mix of people, and like
yeah.
it doesn't seem significant. Which now I like the idea in theory that like the people actually doing um the casting or whatever maybe don't care, but I would think that for him as an actor, like as the character, it would maybe be somewhat of a source of anxiety to worry about what that reaction is going to be because it's this beloved old thing, and then they're going to it would have just been interesting to see him sort of grapple with it, and I think would have been actually a really cool thing for a story to do because we see that reaction on the internet so often to these sorts of things, to see something about someone having to actually deal with that reaction, like what's it like for an actor to emotionally have to sort of know that this reaction is being had to them when they didn't really do anything. They just signed up for a job and they get this sort of vitriol. Yeah, that would have been, I think, a cool thing to explore. They don't really try and touch on that at all.
Yeah. The closest they get to kind of online reaction is with the Doorman character where he's
Yeah, yeah.
He's looking on Twitter, and he's reading that, and that's
And that's
about
part of
it.
why I liked that episode the most, is because I feel like you got the widest sort of sense of like how does like the culture around this person feel about them.
Mm, yeah. So yeah, I think that was kind of a missed opportunity there, not to maybe do that. But you only got like I said, 8 episodes in there.
Right.
Yeah, so you got a kind of limited
They
time.
could have been longer. I mean,
Yeah, it could have been 40 minutes. Maybe you could have done 40 minutes. I'd watch 40
I mean,
minutes.
they could have made just the last episode 40 minutes and then just did more in that last part.
Yeah. Yeah, just like the tension of like, is this movie going to be successful? Oh man, the online reaction is harsh, and people saying they're going to boycott it and all this other shit. You know how like the fucking people do. And
Right.
then it turns out, hey, it's a big success, and even such a big success, his brother, who doubted him his whole life, it goes like, hey man, you did your thing. Like, hey man, congrats. So I mean, that was kind of a big moment for him as well there. So
Yeah.
that worked. Um, so what will be your final thoughts rating for Wonder Man?
So I think, I think all things said and done, and I mean, it's possible I'm being even extra kind to the show because I just have disliked so many of the other things, and so then to see something that I think is good at
That's even
all.
a trailer, fighting superhero fatigue. That's
Yeah,
even
yeah. So like, yeah, exactly. That's like right in the trailer. It's weird. Yeah, it's weird that they just didn't do that much with it. But yeah, I mean, I think the show does a lot of things pretty well. I don't think it's gonna blow anyone's mind, or sort of like you said, it's not going to be like a turnaround for the MCU as a whole sort of thing. But I do think it's pretty good. I think the characters are genuinely interesting. I cared about their emotional arcs, and the friendship between the two leads I thought was actually genuinely pretty effective. Um, Great scenes between them, and even some good filmmaking too. That's one thing I didn't mention. But none of the show looks like it's shot on the volume. It seems like they're going to real places for the
yeah.
most part. There's not that many effects shots, so they can kind of just go film in the real world. So there's something just more tangible and real feeling about this compared to a lot of the other ones. And yeah, I mean, for a few flaws being in there, that hold it back maybe just a bit. And I wish it maybe could have been a little longer. And I don't say that about these Disney Plus Marvel shows. I never say I wish they were longer, but I do wish it was just a bit longer. I think I'd give it like a solid, just like a solid tune in. Maybe like kind of pushing to a high tune in, because of the good qualities that it has. But yeah, I'd say just like a mid to high tune in.
Okay. Would you want to see a second season?
I would be interested in one, but I feel like that's not going to happen. Between them burying it, shows like Daredevil not having good ratings, to the superhero fatigue in general, to the fact that we're, later this year we're getting this Doomsday movie, and we're launching into this big multiverse event that's going to soft reboot the whole universe. A story this small scale feels like it's going to be completely lost in the shuffle of all this multiverse cosmic storyline stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing about his powers is that it seems like, because they don't say where his powers came from, it just seems like he was kind of born with them.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're saying that he's a mutant. Seems like that's what I'm gleaning
Yeah,
from that.
I think there's a possibility that's what they're going with, because they do say that that fire, that big event from his childhood, they specify that it happened when he was 13,
Yeah.
and mutant powers kick in at around the ages of puberty. So that seems to line up. Um, they never did anything like, they never kind of outright confirmed
They didn't
that.
play like the
Though.
X-Men theme song like in
No, I mean,
Miss Marvel. They didn't do nothing
right, it
like
was
that.
way over the top there, but yeah, I mean, it seems like a decent possibility, but at the same time, it's just another one of those things where it's like, all right, you're it's weird to sort of one, he's not a mutant in the comics, so it's maybe weird to change him to be a mutant. Two, you're about to do this big crossover movie with all the Fox X-Men before a soft reboot of the whole MCU. So it's maybe weird to introduce any new mutants before you're about to do a bunch of recasting after bringing all these other people back anyway. And then yeah, I just don't know if anything is gained by the Simon Williams character being a mutant instead of a mutate. like he is in the. I just don't know if you're getting that much more from his character. In fact, I think the Doorman character, like now him, if he's a mutant, I think that's a very interesting, like kind of X-Men offshoot narrative. I don't know if Wonder Man being a mutant makes him more interesting though.
Hmm. Wouldn't the doorman be a mutate and not a mutant?
Did they explain how he got his power? I'm trying to remember
He,
now.
like when he went to go take out the trash, he, like, touched some hole or something, and then he kinda got sucked into it, and then he came out or something, so it's like
Okay,
something
was
like
that
that.
gave him his power? Okay, so I guess
Yeah.
he'd be a mutate then. Well, even still, thematically, I think his story was more befitting of a mutant than necessarily the struggling actor story that Wonder Man has.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd like to see a season 2 of this. I did like it quite a bit. Like I said, you asked me about my expectations for this show or if I had any anticipation for it. I mean, seeing the trailer didn't like blow me away. I was like, they could do some fun things with this concept, like you said, about commentary about superheroes and superhero fatigue, even though they don't really do much about that. But I wasn't expecting how well it does with the character stuff, how well it does with the Simon Williams character and the Trevor Slattery character, how well they work together, how well they talk about the craft of acting and all that. I wasn't really expecting all that, and how you talk about the MCU stuff and like second season and where this character is going to go afterwards. I feel like it's not very preoccupied with that. It's and I kind of like that. Like it's not so reliant on you having all this other prior knowledge of the MCU, which a lot of this stuff obviously as it keeps going on and on and on and on, and all this stuff is connected to this thing and this thing is connected to this thing. You have to have seen all this stuff sometimes to understand the context of it. But here, you really don't. You could maybe watch like Iron Man 3, I guess, and maybe Shang-Chi. That's about it, just to understand the backstory of Trevor Slattery's character more in the context of him. But other than that, it's really not really necessary, I don't think, there. And I think that's the one of the big things also, which was really good about the show, is that it just kind of exists on its own. I know it's like the Marvel Spotlight thing also this is under, which is I guess their version of like what the DC was it the Black Label or what they do, kind of like that.
Yeah, and that's interesting because like how many times have we seen this logo before? Because when it came up on the first episode, I was actually struggling to remember if this was the first time we've seen that Spotlight logo.
No, they've done some other projects. I'll look it up real quick. I think
Uh,
they did Werewolf by Night was Marvel
that's
Spot.
the one I was gonna guess. I thought maybe that's where I might have seen it before.
Yeah, let me make sure there. And Werewolf by Night I liked a lot.
I think that's also one of their strongest things they've done in these kind of post Endgame stuff.
Yeah, which I don't know. Again, that was also another thing, like where are those characters gonna go after this? You know what I mean? Like those type of characters there. Doesn't seem like it is. Doesn't seem like it was Marvel
Hmm,
Spotlight there.
okay.
But it seems like some of the Marvel Spotlight stuff they've done. So did
Hmm,
Echo was I think Marvel Spotlight. That was that
hmm.
Marvel Spotlight, which was
Maybe the logo Marvel Spotlight means that they're not going to put any of the marketing in a spotlight.
yeah, maybe it's just like, just so you know, this is not getting a spotlight. Just so you know, we're forgetting about this show and burying it. Just so you know, there you go. Let's put this on here. So it seems like Echo was one of the shows
Okay.
that was Marvel Spotlight there. Okay, which was I think then we did a review, you and me, or did I do it?
I actually never watched it.
Oh, okay, I forgot who I did that with.
I know
But
basically everything about it just from hearing people talk about it, but I never sat down to watch it myself.
yeah, that was pretty weak. That was kind of weak
I
there.
know
Yeah,
the Kingpin attacks a hootenanny
yeah. I mean, a lot of weird. It's
or
like,
a
and then
powwow or whatever.
she destroys him with the power of
His own trauma, and he
yeah,
runs
like
away
some shit
crying
like
like a little bitch, which is
yeah.
why he's being cucked in the first season of Born Again.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of stuff to deal with. Yeah, that was weird, but yeah. So yeah, I like that you could just kind of watch it, and kind of just turn it on and kind of just watch a good show there. And like I said, if you are tired of superheroes, it's really not a superhero show. It's just a show kind of like, okay, guys got powers, but it's really not about that. Like he's not gonna put on a costume at the end and like, oh, I'm dun dun dun, dun I'm Wonder Man, and he's gonna go and fight crime. Like none of that kind of happens in it.
And when he does put a costume on, it's like a costume fitting for the movie. And
Yeah.
so it's like a personal growth moment, but there's no action in it. And I think that makes that work really well. And to be honest, the costume, it once he does put it on, it does look like what a Wonder Man costume in like, an Avengers movie would look like probably. So it does have a good consistency where it doesn't look like a cheap TV costume, like it looks like it would fit in with the movie costumes.
Yeah, it looked pretty good. Yeah, it did look really, really good as well there. So I did appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'd give it a tune in for me. A strong tune in there for me there. And yeah, I mean, like I said, where's this character gonna go? I mean, I don't think I really care necessarily. I just like seeing this, and I think sometimes that's the problem of these things of like, oh, is this character going to show up in Doomsday, or is this character going to show up in the next X-Men movie? It's like, whatever. I mean, the character shows up when he shows up, I guess.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
I think him rescuing his best friend is sort of a good enough ending that, like, if you don't see more of this character, he felt like he had a full character growth arc.
yeah, that was pretty good there. I mean, I don't know where they're gonna necessarily go. You know what I mean? And I don't know how far damage control reaches or anything like that. Um,
Probably not into the multiverse with Doctor Doom, that's for sure.
well, one last thing. I mean, speaking about damage control, I mean, where do you think? I mean, probably they're being set up for a larger thing there. Where do you think they go from here? Damage control. What do you
I
really
I
see
could
them
see
go?
them being in the Spider-Man and them trying to deal with the Hulk if the Hulk is like turned into the Savage Hulk again and is like out of control for the first time in like a really really long time. I think Damage Control might be who they try and bring in to try and get the Hulk under control.
Mm, yeah. So, because yeah, I mean, you talk about antagonists in the show. They're kind of like the main, only real antagonist, really, of the show.
Yeah.
Really, it's just these people. Yeah.
And they're
And he is.
barely in it. It's mostly just them communicating with Trevor.
Yeah, that's mostly kinda yeah, just what it is there, that's pretty much it, with that one guy that shows up in he was also the same main guy in Spider-Man, same main guy in, what was the other
Miss
one? Oh,
Marvel.
Miss Marvel, yeah. Now that one ended, like I kinda expected this one to end like that, where it's like a big fight where she had with damage control or something, I was like, "Oh, please don't end like that." But yeah. So, 2 tune-ins for Wonder Man. Very cool there.